Let's get into the papers. Welcome aboard the News Review. We'll be joined by policy analyst Selom Brantia. He, of course, is with Imani Africa. For those of you who are joining us, thank you so much for making the time. We'll be hitting the papers to find out what they have to share with us. And I'm sure you've seen this big one. It will be on your screens shortly. Deputy Speaker can vote. And it's an interesting decision because it was adopted by the Supreme Court or decided upon by the Supreme Court via a unanimous decision. There's been so much talk about this situation because, first of all, some parliamentarians have pointed out that Parliament is a master of its own rules. You don't come and tell us what to do with the rules. We apply them based on what we know, based on parliamentary practice. So some have even suggested that this is a sort of invasion of what Parliament stands for. But we have this decision that basically points to the fact that a speaker who is in the seat can actually exercise a vote. And so we're going to be looking at some of that. Let me just walk you through what the story says. So a Deputy Speaker of Parliament presiding over proceedings in the House has the right to vote on matters for determination, the Supreme Court has declared. Besides, the court held that a Deputy Speaker will also be counted as part of the quorum for decision-making. Consequently, the highest court of the land has ruled as valid the passage of the 2022 budget by Parliament on November 30, 2021, during which the first Deputy Speaker, Joseph Osei-Wusu, who was presiding, counted himself as part of the quorum that made that decision. Quote, that the decision taken on the 30th day of November 2021 by Parliament to approve the budget was valid as 138 members, including the person presiding, were present in Parliament when the decision was made. And that was the ruling of the court. Meanwhile, efforts by the Daily Graphic to solicit the views of lawyers and civil society organizations proved futile. And we know how we can trace this back to November the 26th last year. But let me usher in. Hello, Selom. I think you would have to unmute, Selom. All right, so we'll get back to Selom Brantia, but this bit has really stirred the hornet's nest. Yesterday we had the minority leader responding, and there's an issue of interest for me, and this is a very thorny matter. The bit about justices or judges and whether they are leaning in a certain direction, and I say this with every caution, not my suggestion. But the bit about some allegations that have been thrown out there. You remember infamously or famously what Francis Xavier Sosu, Member of Parliament for Medina, put out there about political judges. Well, there's the twist now that, per what the minority leader, Haruna Idrisu, said, that the justices of the court are merely doing the bidding of the executive. Well, let me get the take of Selom Brantia. Mr. Brantia. All right, so we'll get him on the line shortly so he can walk us through. But these are some issues to digest as we look at this all-important matter this morning. All right, so there's also ruling as travesty. That's according to the minority on that same issue. It's on page 13. And the minority in Parliament has described as disappointing the Supreme Court's ruling that a Deputy Speaker presiding over proceedings in Parliament can exercise his right to vote on matters and also be counted as part of the quorum for decision-making. It is said the ruling by the Supreme Court was a travesty of parliamentary justice and a stab in the growth and development of multi-party constitutional democracy that had been built on the spirit and principle of checks and balances. Don't you worry, when we get into the main matters with the members of Parliament for South Dai and Botiano English Yamanfro, we'll find out what exactly. They are on different sides of Parliament. We'll find out what their takes are on this all-important matter. Do we have Selom Brantia now? All right. There's Professor Okwe on no more coups. That's on page 27 of the paper. That's the second part of it. Court declares UTAG strike illegal. I'll be bringing you some details of that. And then Ghanaian medical students in Ukraine transferred to Grenada. But let me bring you that story on page 20, right before I get into it. Mr. Branty, a very good morning to you, sir. Hello, Salam. It appears this morning the connection is not the best as far as interacting with Salam Branty is concerned. Salam, can you hear me now? All right, so we'll work it out. We'll definitely try to work it out to get Salam Branty's thoughts on the myriad matters that we're discussing this morning. But on page 20 of the Daily Graphic newspaper, the Labour Division of the Accra High Court has declared the strike by the University Teachers Association of Ghana as illegal. Okay? In a ruling yesterday, the court presided over by Justice Frank Abotwe Roxton held that the rules of natural justice were not breached by the National Labour Commission in enforcing the directive which sought to call off the strike as argued by lawyers for UTAG. However, UTAG had already issued a press statement last Tuesday announcing the indefinite suspension of the strike. The statement, jointly signed by the president of UTAG, Professor Solomon Nunu, and National Secretary Dr. Asari Asante Ano, urged members of UTAG to, quote, demonstrate good faith by returning to the lecture halls to teach. Now, UTAG embarked on the strike on January 10 this year, and among other things, called on the employer to restore its 2013 interim market premium, among others. Now, the court in its ruling held that all parties, both the NLC and UTAG, were given a fair hearing as all parties agreed and held meetings bordering on resolving the issues in the presence of their lawyers. One thing is certain, in the midst of all these chaotic incidents, that the storm brewing over tertiary institutions has not blown over yet, and that the employer must do the right thing moving forward to ensure that UTAG does not venture into yet another strike. It's as simple as that. Mr. Branty, a very good morning to you.
Very good morning. I hope you can hear me now.
I can hear you loud and clear. Hope you're well.
Awesome.
Hope you're well, Salam.
Yes, I am well. I'm very well.
Great. Let's hit the nail right on the head. What do you make of this latest Supreme Court ruling having to do with, first of all, I mean, the issue concerning a deputy speaker, the speaker and a deputy speaker, and what happens when the deputy has an issue and wants to vote? I mean, basically, there's a parliamentary process, and the deputy wants to participate. And in a unanimous decision, they have said that the deputy speaker can vote, on the back of which they are also saying that the budget has been approved from what we saw the last time when this entire enterprise was tabled for the approval of the budget. What do you make of it? Parliament, especially the minority, has pushed hard against this, saying, no, this is not the way to go. Even going to the extent of accusing the judiciary, once more, of bias, the judges. What do you make of it?
First of all, I'm not a lawyer, so my views on pure legality would not be the most valid at this moment. So let me issue that disclaimer first. But beyond that, even on the basic principles of government that I learned from basic secondary school and basic university courses, it seems like we have now put the judiciary's opinion above that of the legislature when they are all supposed to be peers. This is a matter that was sent for arbitration, and it should have been a clear interpretation of the rule of the law based on the particular article. I've forgotten the number. The particular article that governs the conduct of parliament or conduct of parliamentary procedure. I think that by doing this, the judiciary has opened a can of worms. Of course, the current situation that we have was not anticipated And so that would have probably also been a precursor to what's happening now. However, I think that this particular ruling is problematic in the sense that it is derailing, in a way, the will of, or the procedure, or the way in which things are supposed to have been run in the parliament. And I do not think that it is, then this is more on a personal note, because a lot of the legal commentary is yet to come out based on the justification of the ruling yesterday. I don't think that it was the best direction in which this thing should have been taken, because now it's almost by this ruling subjects Parliament's own procedures that have been laid down in law to any kind of interpretation that whichever court dispensation decides to put it to, and also sets aside certain rules that have been established as the way Parliament should work. So I side with most of the critics who are saying that the judiciary is trying to tell Parliament how to run its affairs. And in a government which is supposed to have equality between the executive, the legislature, and the judiciary, I think this is the wrong direction to take.
You think it's the wrong direction to take, but I mean, we have, yes, Parliament may have its own way of doing things. It may be a master of its own rules. But at the same time, we have an overarching, a supreme law that governs our country, a.k.a. the 1992 Constitution of Ghana. The Supreme Court can interpret what the Constitution says, and at any given time, though it can go back on its own decision or, remedy it, it is saying at this time that this is supposed to be the proper, understanding of the entire framework, and that is what we've delineated for you. How do you feel about that? Because in the end, if any matters, I mean, as high as the election petition, we go to the Supreme Court.
Yes, we do. So, like I said, we are yet to see the views that were proffered by the learned judges on the scenario or the situation as it is. And it will be very interesting to read what drove their views or their opinions.
The ratio decidendi, the reasoning behind their decision.
Yes. So that is very, very important for us to be able to determine. So as much as we probably have different feelings, maybe when the reasons for determination come out, maybe to put better light onto this, because then it means that even down to subcommittee and committee hearings, this has a ramification on how Parliament should conduct its activities.
Right. There is a question, a very interesting one that I heard posed yesterday, I believe by the minority leader or one of those in the minority, that consider, for example, the speaker is not available. You have maybe the first deputy speaker available, and the second deputy is also not available, or he's somewhere within the precincts, but not in Parliament, or not in the House as it's conducting business. So let's say Joseph Osei-Wusu, the Member of Parliament for Bekwai, is in the seat serving as Speaker, and there's this motion, and he moves, he leaves his seat to come and vote. At that point, there is, so to speak, no Speaker. You get it. So there are certain situations that they believe the justices of the court may have been oblivious to, or they may not have averted their minds to, which could be problematic moving forward. Quite a pot of issues. But the NDC, the minority, I've seen the likes of Sam Jata George, reacting to this development, saying, we shall meet on the floor of the House, OPK. He was responding to OPK, his colleague in Parliament. No need to sweat it out. So far, you have never succeeded in any attempt you have made to perpetrate illegality when we are present. You would run with your mates and all of that. I mean, there have been responses on this matter. But one thing that stands out for me, it has to do with whether, interestingly, you spoke about the divisions of the arms of government, whether, interestingly, you feel that the bench, the justices, are being influenced in any way, shape, or form, or can be influenced? Why am I posing this question? You recall what Francis Xavier, Associate Member of Parliament for Medina, said about political judges. Now, we have the minority leader saying that this is a travesty of justice, and it is just the judiciary supporting the executive arm of government or branch of government. You would notice that a lot of decisions in certain instances have gone a certain way. Is that justification to say, well, it appears these judges are leaning towards the executive? And if so, how dangerous would that be?
It would be very difficult to come out categorically and say something like that. A lot of these justices are, in their own right, people who have had a very, very exemplary career. Using the judiciary in such a manner would not be the best approach to take, especially when the other. I believe a matter of people being sentimental about what the judges are doing. Right. And that is why I'm saying that instead of rushing to, whilst there has been a pattern, we always have to acknowledge that whilst there has been a pattern where you see that a lot of decisions that have been coming these days, especially in the last few years, have been going the way of, I would say, have been going the way of the government side or parties that are favorable to the government.
Right.
I believe that this requires a much more, a much more academic stance.
Deeper reflection, maybe.
A deeper reflection, because we have to see the reasons why they profit this, and we have to understand and digest it before we can move into saying that the justices were being partial or not. But however, I think that what is happening is that a lot of people in recent times have not been very satisfied with the way some of these judgments have been coming out. And rightly so, because sometimes even for the ordinary person on the street, certain things that are quite obvious do not seem obvious or do not seem to reflect in some of these rulings. And so, I would believe, and I'll defer to the superior judgment this case and wait for the rulings, and then from there we can really sit down and then digest the issues better. In all of these things, we have to be very careful in our public utterances, so as not to, so as not to cause disaffection or mistrust of our justice system, which is very critical to our stability as a nation.
Right. Let's take a quick look at the Ghanaian Times newspaper now. Deputy Speaker has right to vote, reiterating that story. All hands on deck to break biases against women. Times, ladies, and then UTAG suspends strike indefinitely. When I go on the international front, of course, I have to talk about Ukraine. Evacuees bust out after more Russian shelling. And here, my heart breaks because it has been said on a lot of international platforms that even people trying to get evacuated are being attacked. You know, the buses and other means of transport, hospitals are being shelled and all of that, which has also led to stemming the tide of those leaving cities. I was listening to the BBC just this morning, and a lot of what was said there just makes this situation very untenable. But our hearts are with the Ukrainians, and we pray that these exchanges between Russia and Ukraine will come to an end at some point. Enough damage has been done already to the country called Ukraine. Implement the Mental Health Act now. That's on page 9 of the paper. And this one is interesting. Government releases 20.1 million Ghana cedi compensation for poultry farmers affected by bird flu, undertakes interventions to grow the industry. On the back page, Muntari's winner sinks Wafa. And that was after the veteran actually netted a goal. But let me quickly bring in this bit. Daily Guide newspaper. 4 cop robbers caged. 4 cop robbers caged. And I want to read something put forth by Kwame A+. Let me just try to sort and get it out. But it is tied to this entire bit. So yes, the people's person, Kwame A+, posts tied to the story, Eselom, about the 4 cop robbers who have been caged. He says, and these are his words, not mine, police involved in bullion van robberies are being killed. Why? Because, and again, not my words, his words, top police commissioners are involved in the robberies. I suspect them. They gave a criminal like Jarul a gun. Idiots in uniform. The police service is a huge criminal organization with a few good men. I do not subscribe to these words. Let me just put it out there. Idiots and all of that. But when you look at some of the happenings and the accusations that are coming forth, look, there have been times in the past where some people have intimated that ordinary police officers on the streets, when they take bribes, there are bosses that they share these bribes with. How does this resonate with you? The fact that the very people who are supposed to be protecting us are engaged in bullion van robberies, and that it may go even further up.
Well, because of the current past events which relating to the police, I heard somewhere, I'm yet to substantiate, that one of the accused guys was actually an award winner during his intake.
Yeah.
Yeah, and most of those who were in the robbery were actually from the same training depot, and there is some kind of pattern there that looks very sinister if you wanted to let your imagination roam. And I think that it all boils down to the kind of people we've been recruiting into the security services of late. We have to have that discussion nationally and impartially as to whether recruitment into the security services is now a matter of political patronage or a matter of who has connections. I mean, we've been seeing
Salom, I was in a vehicle the other day, just to interject, and someone told me, look, it's all because of the political ping pong. NDC comes, I mean, jobs for the boys and girls.
Take their own
Some people get into the services. NPP comes, save. And once we keep doing that, we're not only polarizing the security services, we're also creating a situation where people who don't even merit being in there, people who could even be criminals, end up in the services. And what else would show but this?
Yeah, but I mean, it's not about whether people could even be criminals. Some of them are known criminals. There are certain reduce the value of most of our national institutions, especially where mass recruitment is concerned, to places where we reward people that we think were loyal to one party or the other. And as far as this happens, the loyalty of such people is never to the actual oaths of service that they run, but actually to certain people. Now, what shows that some of these people, some of these politically connected people, are not people who are also superior in the police force, for instance, or the police service, for instance. It just it's very easy to conclude then that if politicians can influence the system, then senior policemen can also influence the system, and therefore can also bring their own people in, and let them override certain important security background checks, etc. Like I said, this is a matter that is not something that you can just diagnose and mark off today. It's been a systemic issue that has come over years and years. And therefore, you are at a point where if you look at the data over the past, let's say 5-6 years, for example, you would see that there have always been cases of police people being part of robberies, sometimes even using police vehicles for robberies. Or
police ammunition. Sometimes they give out their arms. They actually rent it out.
Renting out ammunition for robberies and then taking part of the spoils of the robberies. It has gone beyond the age-old bribery that we used to have, where you do shake you down for some 2 cedis or 5 cedis or 10 cedis or whatever the case may be, to much more sophisticated forms of criminal activity. And the fact that this is almost becoming a normal and when I say normal, I'm using it in quotes, a normal scenario these days, it's a very worrying trend, because there are situations where if you read on social media, the police sometimes have been siding with criminals when criminal complaints are brought. You hear cases where CIDs and inspectors collect bribes from the criminals and then do not pursue a case to its logical conclusion.
One of its worst forms, Selom, you're a whistleblower, you point to a criminal who may be in your community or whatever. Next thing you know, the criminal is let out, and the criminal is targeting you because they found out that you pointed to them. So all these issues.
Exactly.
Very quickly, how do you feel we can resolve this? How do we clean up our security services? Very quickly, maybe in some 20 seconds.
Yeah, I think that the fact that the current administration is honest enough to be putting some of these things in the public domain and has seemed to be interdicting some of these police officers more aggressively and arraigning them more aggressively is a step in the right direction.
Right.
What should happen is that we should be able to have a recruitment system in the police and an internal police intelligence system that is proactive. And the recruitment system should be such that it should be devoid completely of political interference. This political interference is nothing but a disservice to the nation. And it's a threat to even the security of the same people who have been perpetrating this act. Because the same people, the same criminals that you are putting into the police service are the same ones who come and rob you one day or rob your family one day, because they do not know that your family is X or Y, and then they will connive in robbing them and probably even causing loss of lives. So we should be very careful about these things and stop reducing them to party patronage reward schemes, because that is what the security service is becoming now.
Business Finder, Freedom Coin, not licensed to operate in Ghana if you're thinking of Bitcoin. The Daily Dispatch newspaper puts sickle cell drug on NHIS special list. And that's a specialist actually saying that. Put sickle cell drug on NHIS. This is a call. I remember, this confab at the Kempinski Hotel years back, and all of this was tabled and a lot of fine talk, but we still haven't done what we can. And a lot of people with sickle cell are more susceptible to this. But to wrap the conversation, Selom, the World Bank's representative, Pierre Laporte, says Ghana's public debt might have exceeded 80% of GDP. You know what has been happening with the CD, worst performing currency in Africa currently. And I always said that when we tout it when it's the best, we should also not run away from it when it's the worst. And we have all the challenges we are facing. The likes of Guta and the rest saying they've lost about 16% of value of what they could have purchased with, let's say, a specific sum of money. Your quick reaction to that?
Yeah.
And maybe, Selom, and maybe when you're done with that, just add your brief take on the Buem election. Saul now going to, just put those two together very quickly. I don't want us to disaggregate them very quickly.
No problem. So the handlers of the economy probably are in hot soup right now, because even yesterday I posted on Facebook about the finance minister's speech in 2013 or so on the 56th anniversary of
the one shared by Gabi Asari Ochodako, right?
Yes, and I believe that they have not been able to handle it as well as they would have wished. And the situation currently is such that we need a Hail Mary to rescue the CD, because in light of the current instability right now and the fact that we do not even have very clear ideas of where our revenue targets are going to be hit, we should just have to brace for some more taxation to be able to shore up the CD. Or unless we pray that we find some kind of mineral and mine it within this year to ensure that we get the kind of money we need to shore the CD up.
On the Saul situation?
I think that also the pressure comes from the traders also, because apart from just the dollar, you also have the safer trade that goes on between our neighboring countries, where the CD is actually under pressure. And I think these are some of the things that we probably need to begin to look at. Why the CD is not preferred trading currency around the region, but rather the safer. So it means that our CD is always being exchanged or being the one that has to be exchanged to a different currency for transactions to take place.
Right.
I think all of these need to begin to be looked at, and if we probably open up the borders, it might make things easier. I do not know. But then right now, as it is, yes, we have that problem, and we need to find a way to solve it. So segueing into the BOEM issue,
30 seconds, Salom, on that one. 30 seconds.
Yes, the AG's proposal is preposterous. You have disenfranchised a certain constituency, and now you are asking for by-elections in a very funny way to fix that. I don't know whether it is compensation for the Supreme Court ruling, but in whichever way you look at it, this has been a serious breach of justice that in any country that wants to show itself as a bastion of democracy, such a thing should never have been allowed to happen anyway. And it's a grand condemnation on the will of the ruling party to ensure that people are duly represented. Touch wood, if it had been any other region in this country and the government had been different, there would have been much more noise made about this, and there would have been far more, a vigorous reaction to situations like this.
Right.
So this is what I believe, and that's what I firmly stand by.
Salom, I love the way you share your thoughts. No holds barred. It's been another good one. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. And do have a wonderful day. All right. Right before we go, I just want to do this very quickly. Lawrence Wache sends this one in on Facebook. You've been watching the live in Kwanta near Unity Oil Filling Station in Kumasi. Happy birthday to my son, Kwame Owusu Wache, a.k.a. Boucher Jr. at Brain Foundation International School, as he turns 4 years today. May God bless him. Well, happy birthday to our little 4-year-old. That's how we wrap up on the news review. Up next, we have sports. Stay.